Hey everyone, this review of Far Cry 6 is spoiler free. If you enjoy it, please consider leaving the video a thumbs up, it definitely helps a bunch. Far Cry 6 has you play as Danny Rojas, as he or she leads a revolution to free Yara from the fascist dictator Anton Castillo. Yara is essentially a fictionalized Cuba, and the Caribbean setting is pretty damn gorgeous, with a surprising amount of variety to it. To take down Castillo, Danny has to unite 3 groups of guerrillas, and as you'd expect, that involves gaining their loyalty first through 3 sets of quest chains. Gameplay-wise, it presents a very familiar set of circumstances to anyone who's ever played an open-world game. Beat the tutorial/expose, find the first group of guerrillas and spend 5 hours helping them out and gain their loyalty, and then move on to the next one, etc. In between, Yara is your oyster, and Danny can basically drive around and do whatever the hell she wants. Mostly, this will be to clear roadblocks to unlock fast travel spots, no more radio towers to climb here, and to disable anti-air weapons so you can fly around the air without getting shot down. Both of which are absolutely essential for getting around to and from objectives. This is the biggest Far Cry map ever, not as big as Assassin's Creed Odyssey, but still enormous, so get ready to clear camps again and again, and again and again and again. This is essentially what you'll be doing in Far Cry 6, going from each quest marker to the next while clearing out parts of the map. Interestingly enough, there isn't a difficulty option in this game. You either pick the story mode or the action mode, which basically serves as easy or normal mode. And FYI, if you see any reviews where their health bars are going down like this, you know they're playing on story mode. Difficulty is player determined instead, as each region has a level and the higher it is, the harder the enemies are. So, ignoring optional activities will make the game harder since the game will out-level you as you enter these new zones. And I was typically underleveled by 1 or 2, pretty much always because I just focused on the main story for the most part. And this was fine for me because I like the challenge, and thankfully the game never gates any story content behind the level requirements. I'm looking at you, Assassin's Creed Odyssey. The game though does feature bottom-end level scaling, such that enemies level up as you do, matching their power to yours. And this is kind of a double-edged sword because on one hand you'll always be challenged in prior areas, which gives you a reason to go back to them without feeling like it's pointless, but on the other hand you never get that feeling of power fantasy that some people crave. For the most part, I found the side content in Far Cry 6 rather boring. It's your typical assortment of treasure finding, animal hunting, cash races, etc. Mildly interesting for completionists, and pretty throwaway for everyone else. Actual story-driven side content is oddly rare, with only a handful of companion stories that aren't all that interesting and involve lots of chores and running around and collecting stuff. Most of the side content is built around finding uranium for buying unique weapons and upgrading your Supremo, which is sort of your backpack that has your chosen special ability. There are many different ones, including rockets, rings of fire, healing canisters, poison, EMPs, etc. And it's a pretty cool idea, but honestly, the Supremos don't really add that much to the gameplay, because the ability portion has a huge cooldown, so you'll likely only use it once per fight. It does give you a lot of utility though, because you can customize it with mods and install 4 additional gadgets on it, so there's a bunch of flexibility here. And the same could be said with the game's weapon customization system, which lets you install mods, attachments, and bullet types to all of your guns. This is actually one of the new changes to Far Cry 6. Every enemy and vehicle is weak to a certain type of bullet, so there's a little bit of that RPG decision making when creating loadouts, so you can be prepared for different situations. What was smart about how Far Cry 6 does this was that the player can only choose 4 weapons to carry at a single time. If they want a 5th, they actually have to go into the menu and equip it, which is not only a big hassle, but it breaks the flow of the gameplay as well. I actually think this was intentional design because the game doesn't want you to have 3 different sniper rifles you can flip to with 3 different bullet types. That would be far too easy and jeopardize the fun of real-time improvisational gameplay, which is something that has always been at the heart of Far Cry. By making it a burden to swap weapons beyond your easy access weapon wheel, the game is just promoting spontaneous play and it wants you to embrace it, especially with how I just mentioned the 4 additional gadgets your Supremo has. You always have the tools to deal with enemies in Far Cry 6, you just have to be smart about it, and that's where the fun comes in. Far Cry 6 is at its best when it lets you interact with its gameplay in this makeshift, slightly chaotic way. The best part about the combat is how the game feels, and I'm seriously impressed with the gameplay mechanics, the gunplay, and the movement. The gunplay is weighty, fast, slick, and fluid, and it feels as good or better than most AAA first-person shooters on the market. And that's not something you could always say about the Far Cry series. Rifles have a great sense of presence, the sound effects are fantastic, and mechanically speaking, they have very realistic recoil and weapon sway, at least for a video game. This leads to a very enjoyable shooting experience that feels like just the right amount of arcadey, assuming you're not taking the stealth route, which is also totally viable and fun. To support you in this endeavor, the game gives you a phone to spot enemies and thin the ranks before you run in, and it's very quick and easy to use, which is nice. Here's an example of what a typical combat approach looks like in Far Cry 6.
No more soldiers here. Shit. Checkpoint.
When all hell breaks loose, enemies are very aggressive, toss tons of grenades, and have swarm-like AI, and they also very rarely miss a shot. The hit-scan gameplay and the precision grenades do feel a little bit video gamey, I'll admit it, but it keeps you on the move and makes encounters feel very lethal and fast. Time to kill is also very good. You can pop an enemy with 1 to 3 hits, and they can do the same for you too. They're never bullet spongy unless you're using the wrong ammo, which again encourages playing on your feet and using all the resources you have. This is where Far Cry 6 is at its best, improvisational, unscripted gameplay, with the game giving you great, fluid mechanics so you can make that magic happen. Other elements of the game don't fare as well though, starting with the overarching story and the tone. You see, Far Cry 6 has a very serious dark side to it, especially with its main villain, Anton Castillo. The story presentation features a few shocking moments that I felt were influenced by popular cinema and episodic TV, like unironically Breaking Bad. Giancarlo Esposito does a fantastic job with his performance. Individually, he's cruel and merciless, and shocking in his blood-soaked crusade. But the rest of the game is a goofy sandbox extravaganza party. They don't mix.
I've been kicked in the cojones 1,000 times. I haven't felt them since 72. Hey!
Never do that again.
What? Mi caso su casa, baby tigre. Come on, meet the family.
It's certainly nothing new to the series to have all sorts of tone dissonance, but it seems to be even more at odds with itself in this game. The characters you meet are so wacky, out of their minds, insane, and way over the top. It's almost comical, and I mean that in a bad way. Such behavior doesn't fit well in a story that's actually trying to be serious and emotional and grim, especially when every single character is literally insane. It just makes it very hard to take seriously, and it's very hard to get attached to the story or any of it when you have this kind of waffle cone humor and silly tonality permeating through the experience at every opportunity. And unfortunately, it doesn't help that the characters in this game just flat out suck, including Danny and all of her companions you meet. They're so underdeveloped and so poorly written. I really do feel bad for the voice actors, because they did a pretty good job. The material they had was just shit. I understand what Far Cry stands for, but the game wanting to be serious while flying off the rails kooky zangy is like wanting to have your cake and eat it too. From a story and character perspective, Far Cry 6 just stretches itself way too thin, and it's a shame Castillo doesn't take a more central stage in the presentation. Or frankly, any of the characters really. Castillo himself gets a serious lack of screen time. In fact, he's only in 2 actual real-time cutscenes in this game. The rest of the scenes he's in are 45-second pre-rendered cutscenes, all of which rendered at a lovely 30 frames per second, which is great for cinematic feels, but is also very jarring when I'm playing at 144 frames a second. He really needs to be far more of a focus because he has the potential to be one of the best characterization elements in this game, but there just isn't really anything else to him. Great acting cannot save bad, underdeveloped writing. The best villains in history have nuanced desires. They're good and bad, they show a broad range of emotions, and they're deep because of it. Because he never gets much time in the limelight, he ends up coming across as very one-dimensional. His behavior only serves his zealous crusade, not actually his overall character. I really appreciated the way Far Cry 6 ended, but it could have been so much more impactful if there was more build-up and development to him and just basically every character in this game. And it's a damn shame to say that I ended up skipping all cutscenes after a couple hours, which is something I never ever do. Far Cry 6 is a paradox in quality. It has 2 sides to it, an incredibly fun, free-roaming, player-driven sandbox, and a story that is presented so nutty and quirky that it's best not to even take it seriously. I had a lot of fun in Far Cry 6 when it was just me, my guns, my tools, and the game. It's profoundly beautiful, it feels awesome, the mechanics are on point, it has great customization, fun weapons. Plenty of creative ways to use gadgets and interact with the world, but everything else beyond that is pretty blasé. I guess though that's been par for the course for Far Cry for a long time. Far Cry is always going to be weird and fun, and sometimes quite shallow, but its advancement through time is very odd to see. What it does great keeps getting better, but the areas it sucks at keep sucking. I'd really love to see Ubisoft either make a serious Far Cry game, or go all out with the insanity such that the story actually aligns with the gameplay. Far Cry 6 lands somewhere in the awkward space in between. If you enjoy open world games, first-person shooting, or love to mess around in video game sandboxes with modern mechanics that feel great, absolutely get this game. I'm confident you'll find a lot to love in the 15 or so hour campaign. There's also some pretty good co-op action in a mode called Insurgency, which provides some weekly live content for you once you finish the game. But if you don't like open world games, are on the fence, or have Far Cry fatigue syndrome, you might want to wait for a sale. Overall, fantastic next-gen Far Cry gameplay, a weird-ass story, bad characters, and the same formula as before. Thanks for watching, guys. As a little bonus, I've included a separate written review in the pinned comment below, which covers different information than what I've presented here. You all take care, and I'll see you guys in our next video. Peace out.